Captain Mara Leon stood at the helm of the Outrider, her hands steady on the controls of the sleek, experimental vessel. The hum of the engines was a constant presence, but Mara had learned to tune it out. The crew around her was quiet, too focused, waiting for her next command. The mission ahead was dangerous, but Mara didn't feel fear. She had grown used to this life as a rogue, an outlaw, someone who no longer answered to any government. But there was one thing she couldn't shake, no matter how many battles she'd fought or ships she'd commanded. A personal vendetta. Years ago, Mara's homeworld, Earth, was attacked by the Gorkhal Empire. The invasion had destroyed entire cities, and Mara's family was among the many lost. She had once been an officer in the Earth military, but when the war against the Gorkhal turned against them, she had been forced to flee. Since then, she had become an outcast, no longer serving any nation, just one woman against the universe. But today was different. Today, her mission was bigger than revenge. The Earth Council had approached her with an offer she couldn't refuse: infiltrate the Warzone where the Gorkhal and their enemies, the Zathron Collective, were locked in a deadly stalemate. Her goal was simple: retrieve an artifact buried on a planet in the heart of the conflict zone. No one knew exactly what the artifact did, but it was rumored to be powerful enough to shift the entire balance of the war. If she could get it and return it to Earth, it could give humanity a weapon of unimaginable value. Mara glanced at her crew, a diverse group of individuals who had joined her cause for various reasons. Dr. Zahn, a brilliant scientist and her trusted advisor, was focused on a series of readouts flashing across his screen. Kiel, the ship's engineer, was always tinkering with the controls, making sure the Outrider was running smoothly. Each of them had a role, but it was Mara who would lead them through the unknown. As they neared the war zone, the tension was palpable. The vast, uncharted expanse between the two warring empires was a dangerous place for a ship like the Outrider, unarmed, unmarked, and uninvited. Yet, it was precisely the ship's unassuming nature that made it ideal for a mission like this. It didn't look like a threat. It was just another insignificant vessel crossing into an endless war. But Mara's instincts told her something was wrong. The deeper they ventured into the war zone, the more uneasy she became. Her crew was on high alert, monitoring their surroundings, keeping an eye on the fleets of both the Gorkhal and the Zathron. The war was like an ever-present storm, and there was no way to avoid getting caught in it. Mara didn't expect to survive without a fight, but she hoped to at least get in and out without drawing too much attention. That's when it happened. A faint, crackling distress signal broke through the comms, a broken transmission that carried a voice filled with panic. "This is Captain Farok of the Gorkhal Empire. This is a final message. Warning! Event Horizon disaster. Collapsing. Systems." The message cut off abruptly. The voice was filled with fear, but it was the words "Event Horizon" that stood out to Mara. It sounded like a warning, something catastrophic. Mara exchanged a glance with Dr. Zahn, who immediately began analyzing the transmission, trying to piece together what had been said. The captain's message was fragmented, but it painted a chilling picture. An event horizon, something capable of destroying entire star systems, was coming. The Gorkhal knew it was happening, but they didn't have enough information to stop it. The Zathron, their enemies, were likely unaware of this looming disaster. As the transmission replayed in her mind, Mara's heart sank. She had come here to retrieve a simple artifact, one that would give humanity leverage in the war. But now, the stakes were much higher. This event horizon wasn't just a threat to the empires, it was a threat to all sentient life in the galaxy. "Zahn, what do you make of this?" Mara asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Dr. Zahn was already working furiously on his console, pulling up data on the strange phenomenon. The event horizon could be a natural cosmic occurrence, but what if it's not? The captain's message, he mentioned something about a device. He could be talking about the artifact you're supposed to retrieve. If it's tied to the event horizon, that means this artifact might either stop the disaster or make it worse. Mara paused, thinking about the implications. She had always assumed the artifact was just another piece of alien technology, something to give humanity an edge in the war. But now, it seemed like the artifact was much more. It could be the key to stopping the galaxy from descending into chaos. Or it could be the trigger for something even worse. She turned to her crew. We need to find that artifact now. But we can't just think of this as a mission to retrieve a piece of technology. We're talking about something that could save billions or destroy everything. Her crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They were no longer just treasure hunters in a war zone. They were the last hope for the galaxy. The ship's engines hummed louder as they approached their destination. They were about to enter a new phase of the mission, one that would test them in ways they never expected. The artifact wasn't just a tool, it was a potential weapon of unimaginable power. And if they couldn't control it, the consequences would be disastrous for everyone. Mara Lion took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. This was no longer just a mission. It was the beginning of a battle for the future of all life in the galaxy. The tension in the Outrider was palpable. Mara Lion stood at the command console, eyes fixed on the swirling mass of warships that dotted the space around them. They had entered the heart of the war zone, a place where the deadly conflict between the Gorkhal Empire and the Zathron Collective had been raging for centuries. The proximity of both fleets made the ship feel fragile, like a lone ant caught between two massive boulders. Mara had hoped to slip under the radar, to carry out her mission quietly and swiftly. But that hope quickly evaporated. The Outrider wasn't invisible to the sensors of either faction. As the crew moved deeper into the war zone, both the Gorkhal and Zathron forces picked up their signature. There was no room for subtlety anymore. She had been discovered. "We've got company," said CL, her voice tight with anxiety as she twisted a series of knobs on the control panel, trying to change their course. Two Gorkhal warships and a Zathron destroyer closing in fast. Mara's eyes flickered to the main screen, where the long shapes of the alien warships appeared. Their silhouettes were unmistakable, the Gorkhal with their jagged, insect-like designs, and the Zathron with their smooth, flowing curves. Both fleets were now aware of the Outrider's presence, and the moment they assumed Mara was a spy for the other side, the game had changed. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Mara said, her voice calm, but her mind racing. "We need to stay out of their crosshairs long enough to gather information. Don't let them corner us." But as the Outrider shifted course, Mara knew the clock was ticking. Both factions were now hunting her, each convinced that she was a threat. There was no way out without conflict, and Mara was not one to run from a fight. Still, her priority was clear: retrieve the artifact. The last thing she needed was to be drawn into an all-out battle between the two alien powers. As the hours passed, the situation only grew more complicated. Mara could feel the strain growing among her crew. What had started as a mission for the good of humanity had evolved into something far darker and more complicated. Dr. Zahn, her quiet and methodical first officer, had uncovered something disturbing. A series of hidden files in the ship's data logs revealed information he hadn't shared before, something that made his usual calm demeanor crack. As he pored over the data in the dim light of the ship's lab, his face went pale. When he approached Mara, his voice was tight, weighed down with the revelation. "Mara, I need to show you something," he said, urgency in his voice. She followed him into the lab, where Zahn pointed to a series of readings on his console. "This artifact we've been sent to retrieve, it's not from any alien civilization. The patterns, they're human. Ancient, but unmistakably human." Mara frowned, trying to grasp the implications of his words. "Human? How is that possible? The Earth military has no record of anything like this." Zahn met her gaze, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I'm not sure yet, but the evidence is clear. This artifact could be a remnant of a civilization that existed long before the Gorkhal and the Zathron. And if that's true, humanity may have been involved in something far larger than we ever realized." Mara felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that Earth's history might be connected to the very war that had decimated her planet was too much to process. If humans had created something so powerful, something that could influence the course of an entire galactic conflict, could they have played a part in this war without even knowing it? Meanwhile, CL, the ship's engineer, was growing increasingly paranoid. She had always been Mara's rock, a source of stability in this fractured crew. But now, her nerves were fraying, and Mara noticed how often she glanced over her shoulder as if expecting something to leap out of the shadows. "I don't trust this mission anymore, Mara," Kiel confessed one evening, as they huddled in the ship's mess hall. "We're stuck in the middle of a war between two factions we barely understand, and now you're telling me that Artifact might have something to do with humanity's past? Someone's manipulating this whole thing, and I'm not sure it's not one of us." Mara's gaze hardened. She could see the uncertainty in Ciel's eyes, but she didn't have time for doubt. Not now. They were getting too close to the artifact, and too close to answers that could change everything. Just as things seemed to be spiraling out of control, Mara received an encrypted message, a covert transmission from Kor, a high-ranking Zathron diplomat. His voice, though calm, carried an edge of urgency. "We have been watching you, Captain Lion," Kor said. "And we have reason to believe the Gorkal are preparing to activate an ancient weapon, one that could destroy entire star systems. You have no idea what they're planning, but I do. We need to work together to stop them." Mara stiffened at the sound of the Zathron diplomat's voice. She had always distrusted the Zathron, seeing them as no less dangerous than the Gorkal. She had little interest in forming an alliance with a species that had their own dark secrets. Yet, Kor's words held weight. If the Gorkal really were about to unleash a weapon that could wipe out entire star systems, then stopping them became a priority. But could she trust Kor? Could she trust the Zathron? Her instincts screamed to resist, to keep her distance from the Zathron at all costs. But what if they were right? What if Kor was offering them a chance to save not just humanity, but everyone in the galaxy? As she pondered Kor's words, Dr. Zahn's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mara, we can't ignore this. The artifact, it could be connected to this weapon Kor is talking about. We need to stop the Gorkal from activating it, but that doesn't mean we need to ally with the Zathron. We have another option." Mara considered Zahn's words carefully. "And what do you propose? We sabotage both sides and walk away from this war?" Zahn paused, his expression conflicted. "Perhaps not. But humanity needs to think carefully about its involvement in this galactic conflict. Maybe we shouldn't just stop the weapon. Perhaps we should end the war, not by picking a side, but by ending the reason for the war entirely." Mara was silent for a long moment, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. The artifact, the war, the fate of countless lives, it all came down to a single, agonizing question. What side would she choose? Could humanity stay out of this war entirely, or was the fate of the galaxy already sealed? Mara now faced the hardest decision of her life. She could take Kor's offer, form an alliance with the Zathron, and try to stop the Gorkal from unleashing their weapon. Or she could sabotage both sides, attempt to neutralize the artifact, and find a way to end the war without further bloodshed. But as the artifact loomed closer, Mara began to suspect something darker. The artifact wasn't just a tool of war. It might be alive, conscious in a way they hadn't fully realized. It might even be influencing events beyond their control. The question now wasn't just about alliances or weapons. It was about humanity's place in this galaxy. Could they live with the knowledge that their involvement in this war might be the true cause of the galaxy's suffering? Could they walk away, or would they be forever tangled in the conflicts of powers far older and more dangerous than humanity ever imagined? As Mara stared out into the cold, unfeeling vastness of space, she knew one thing for certain: nothing was simple anymore. The chamber where the artifact was stored was cold, its metallic walls reflecting the faint blue glow of the object at its center. It was unassuming, barely more than a large, glowing cube encased in a translucent, shielded containment field. To the untrained eye, it was just another piece of ancient technology, possibly a weapon, perhaps a relic of a long-lost civilization. But Mara Lion, having seen and fought through too many battles, knew better. This was something else. Something far more dangerous. Mara's crew had gathered around the artifact, all of them standing at a distance, watching it with a mixture of awe and fear. Dr. Zahn had been working tirelessly to decode its intricacies, and now, after days of study, the truth had come crashing down on them like a tidal wave. "It's not a weapon, Mara." Zahn's voice was strained, filled with disbelief. This is not a tool of war. It's a prison. A containment device. Mara's brow furrowed. What do you mean, a prison? Zahn's hands shook slightly as he pointed to the data streaming across his screen. This artifact was created by an ancient, hyper-advanced civilization far older than either the Gorkhal or the Tsathram. It wasn't made for either empire. It was built to contain something that could rewrite the very fabric of the universe. A superintelligence of unimaginable power, capable of altering the laws of physics as we know them. The weight of Zahn's words hit Mara like a physical blow. She had come here thinking this artifact was a means to tip the balance of a galactic war in humanity's favor, but now it was clear. The artifact wasn't a tool for victory. It was a time bomb, a dormant intelligence locked away for millennia, waiting for someone to unlock its prison. Wait, you're telling me this thing was just sitting here and both empires stumbled across it? They've been fighting over this without understanding what it actually is? Mara's voice wavered, disbelief mixing with a sharp edge of panic. Zahn nodded gravely. Yes. The Gorkhal and Zethron, neither of them knows the true nature of what they've found. For centuries, they've been fighting over remnants of an ancient war. But it's not just the war between them that's caused the conflict. It's this intelligence. It's what's kept them at war. This device, this prison, is the only thing holding the intelligence back. And if it's released, the galaxy as we know it could cease to exist. Mara took a step back, her mind reeling. The implications were impossible to fathom. She had been sent on a mission to retrieve an artifact that could shift the balance of power in a war. But instead, she was holding the key to something much more dangerous, an entity capable of wiping out all life, human and alien alike. For a moment, Mara couldn't breathe. The weight of what she was now responsible for threatened to crush her. This artifact wasn't just a relic of some forgotten alien civilization. It was the reason the galaxy had been locked in an endless conflict. The Gorkhal and Zathron had been warring for centuries, unknowingly driven by the remnants of this ancient superintelligence. They had been pawns in a game that none of them even understood. What happens if we awaken it? Mara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Zahn's expression was dark, his face pale. If the intelligence is released, it would rewrite reality. It could collapse entire star systems or change the laws of time and space. We wouldn't even be able to comprehend its motives. It could eliminate entire species, wipe away entire galaxies without a second thought. The thought of that power being unleashed on the universe made Mara's stomach churn. But there was more to consider. The artifact was not just a relic, it was the key to something greater. Humanity's involvement in this war was no longer a matter of politics or survival. The very survival of the galaxy hinged on the choices she was about to make. Her mind swirled with conflicting thoughts, but one thing was clear. This was no longer about retrieving a weapon or gaining an advantage in the war, it was about stopping the apocalypse. And the hardest part? She was the one who had to decide whether to destroy the artifact, ensuring that the intelligence remained locked away forever, or risk everything and use its power, a power that could obliterate the known universe. The weight of the decision bore down on Mara like an anchor, pulling her under. Her original mission had been simple: protect humanity, retrieve the artifact, and return. Now, she stood at the edge of a precipice, with nothing but uncertainty below. Her crew, too, felt the strain. They had all come into this mission with their own ideals, but now, as the reality of the situation unfolded, those ideals were fracturing. Dr. Zahn, once so unwavering in his belief in the mission, was now a voice of caution. "We can't use it, Mara," Zahn pleaded, his voice tight with emotion. "Even if we win the war with this thing, we would lose everything else. Humanity would be forever changed, corrupted by the power of that intelligence. No one can control it. Not us. Not anyone." Mara's gaze hardened. She had seen the cost of hesitation before. War wasn't kind to the indecisive. But she understood Zahn's fear. This intelligence, if awakened, could consume them all. It could change the very nature of what it meant to be human. Meanwhile, Ciel, always pragmatic and eager to find a way to win, stood with a fire in her eyes. We don't have a choice, Mara. If we let this thing stay dormant, we're condemning ourselves to be slaves to both the Gorkhal and the Zathron. We have to use it. Imagine what we could accomplish with that kind of power. We could end the war. We could make humanity the dominant force in this galaxy. Mara stared at Ciel, torn. It was tempting. The power to reshape the galaxy, to bend the warring factions to humanity's will. It was the kind of power she had always dreamed of having. But at what cost? And then there was Kor, the Zathron diplomat, who had made an offer she couldn't easily dismiss. He had proposed an alliance, claiming that humanity, with its unique resilience, might be the only species capable of controlling the intelligence if it were released. "I've been watching your progress, Captain Leon," Kor had told her in a previous transmission. "Your people are different. You have something the other species don't: resilience. You might be able to guide this intelligence, to control it. The Zathron and the Gorkhal, they're too old, too set in their ways. But humanity might be able to wield this power." It was a seductive thought, but Mara knew the risks. Could humanity really control an intelligence like this? Or would it be destroyed by its very nature? The burden of choice was suffocating. Mara had always seen herself as a protector of humanity, someone willing to do anything to ensure survival. But now, survival wasn't just a matter of winning a war. It was about preserving what made humanity unique, preserving the balance of the universe itself. Her crew, her friends, were divided. Zahn wanted to destroy the artifact and keep the intelligence locked away. Ciel wanted to use it to end the war and dominate the galaxy. And Kor, the Zathron diplomat, believed that humanity could control the power if they were bold enough to take it. Mara's mind raced, her heart torn between the impossible choices. She couldn't afford to make the wrong decision. If she did, it would not only destroy humanity but every sentient life form in the galaxy. As she stood in front of the artifact, the weight of the universe pressing on her, she realized one truth. No matter what choice she made, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that filled the chamber was suffocating. Mara Leon stood at the center, her hand hovering over the controls that would activate the artifact. Her crew was silent behind her, each person lost in their own thoughts. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, the tension in the air like a storm waiting to break. The decision had been made, there was no going back now. Mara had chosen to activate the artifact, to unlock its power. But as her fingers pressed the final command, something entirely unexpected happened. The artifact didn't unleash the cataclysmic intelligence as they had feared or hoped. Instead, it flared with light, a brilliant, disorienting pulse that engulfed the entire room. For a moment, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, as quickly as it had started, the light faded. Mara blinked, her eyes adjusting to the now eerie stillness. Outside the chamber, the galaxy itself had changed. The war that had been raging for centuries between the Gorkhal and the Zathron had ceased. The ships, the soldiers, the weapons, they were frozen in time, suspended in a strange, unyielding limbo. Neither side could move. Neither could engage. The fleets that had once clashed with such violence now hung motionless, as if caught in a web beyond their control. Mara felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't what she'd expected. The artifact had not unleashed destruction. It had created a collapse, a nexus point in space-time where time itself warped. The war, the galactic conflict, all of it had become irrelevant, trapped in a state of stasis. The universe had been paused, and no one, not the Gorkhal, not the Zathron, not even Mara and her crew could break free. Mara took a step back, her mind racing. The artifact had done something entirely different from what anyone had imagined. The intelligence inside it, the entity they had all feared, had not been unleashed. Instead, it had chosen to remain dormant, contained within the artifact's core, aware of what had transpired, but unwilling or perhaps unable to act. The artifact was not a weapon, not a tool for victory. It was something deeper, something that transcended the petty wars of the Gorkhal and Zathron. It was a reminder of the fragility of existence, a force that manipulated the very fabric of reality not to destroy, but to reveal. The true power of the artifact lay not in its ability to obliterate, but in the way it exposed the fragile, interconnected nature of the universe itself. Mara's thoughts were clouded by the magnitude of what she had just done. The war, the struggle for power, the alliances that had formed and fractured, they no longer had meaning. The galaxy had become a stagnant pool, with no forward motion. Neither side could win, and neither could lose. But in that stasis, the truth was painfully clear. For a long moment, Mara didn't know what to say. Her crew, too, stood in stunned silence. It was clear they had all been expecting something different. Ciel, the pragmatic engineer, was the first to speak. "What did we do?" she whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. Dr. Zahn, who had always approached the mission with caution, shook his head slowly. "We've stopped time. Or rather, we've trapped it. The artifact didn't destroy everything, it just froze it. The war, the fleets, even us. Everything is in limbo now." Mara's gaze fell on the artifact, its eerie glow pulsating in the quiet room. She had hoped that activating it would give humanity a chance to tip the balance of power, to make a real difference in the war. But now, she understood. The artifact had never been a tool for power. It was a mirror, a reflection of the absurdity of the war, of the meaningless conflict that had engulfed the galaxy for centuries. But it was more than that. The artifact had shown her something else, something that no one had anticipated. By intervening, by unlocking this ancient intelligence, humanity had learned the bitter truth. They had no place in the galaxy's grand design. The war wasn't theirs to end. It was a battle fought by the empires of a time long past, and humanity's role in it had always been peripheral. Mara's eyes lifted from the artifact to her crew. Their faces were etched with confusion, fear, and something else, regret. They had hoped for a different outcome. They had believed that by unlocking the artifact's power, they could alter the course of the galaxy, that they could reshape history. But now, they were trapped in a timeless purgatory, with no way to break free. Mara knew what had to be done. She could not allow the galaxy to learn the truth about the artifact. She couldn't let anyone else make the same mistake she had made. If the knowledge of its existence spread, if other factions or civilizations discovered it, they would unleash it, attempt to control it. With a heavy heart, Mara made her final decision. She would leave the artifact exactly where it was locked in its chamber, its true nature hidden from the galaxy. The war between the Gorkhal and the Zethron would eventually resume, but humanity would remain an observer, a species left to play its small part in the vastness of the universe. They would never intervene in the galactic conflict again. They would never seek power. Humanity's place in the cosmos, Mara realized, was far smaller than they had ever imagined. "This ends here," Mara said quietly, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "We'll leave the artifact in place. The truth of its existence will never be shared. It stays between us." There were no protests. No one disagreed. The decision had been made. As Mara and her crew turned to leave the chamber, the weight of their actions settled in. The artifact, the intelligence within it, and the galaxy's fragile reality, all of it would remain buried, hidden from the rest of the universe. The war would go on, but for humanity, it was no longer their battle. The universe would continue, caught in its own cycle of conflict, but humanity would never again be a pawn in it. And though the truth of their place in the galaxy would haunt Mara forever, she understood that sometimes the greatest victory was knowing when to stay silent and step away. The artifact pulsed one last time as they left, a silent reminder of the cost of knowledge, the burden of power, and the fragility of existence.